Good morning. I am Melissa Ensign Bedford, a member of our Board of Trustees, and I am glad to welcome you to our Sunday service this morning at the U Church of Columbia. I am a white woman with gray blonde hair and wearing glasses and a blue sweater. We are a congregation striving to embody courageous love, radical welcome, and deep connection. And we are so glad you are here. Bringing all that you are and all that you love and your deepest commitments to a more just world for all, welcome. We are glad to be offering a live stream of our services, and we would like to extend an additional welcome to those of you joining online. We strive to make our worship accessible, and those of you at home or using screen readers in person can find an accessible order of service with hymn lyrics included at our homepage, uuccomo.org. If you're on Zoom, we have automated captioning turned on, and we will provide spoken descriptions of the images and videos shown on the screen, as well as participants in the service. For those in the sanctuary, we have listening assistance devices with our ushers near the entrance to the sanctuary. Please let Reverend Molly know if you have other access needs. We can meet with an email to minister@uuccomo.org. For those of you with us in person, we invite you to attend carefully to the safety of all by leaving plenty of space, wearing your masks, and assuring you are greeting one another that is comfortable to both parties. Excuse me, I'm struggling to read this morning. We'd like to particularly welcome any visitors among us this morning and invite you to find our guest book after the service in the entry, if you did not already, or in the chat if you're with us online. We'd love to stay in touch with you about our goings-on. Children and babies are always welcome in worship, and we also have a lively children's religious education program and nursery care for our youngest ones. All nursery caregivers and RE teachers are masked and vaccinated. Our children will be invited to their classes after our centering moment and embodied prayer. If you have a joy or sorrow you'd like spoken aloud during the service, you can write them on a yellow slip by the piano to be included in our time of prayer, or if you're online, please include your joys and sorrows in the chat now so that they can be relayed to our worship leaders for our time of prayer. And now let us take a moment to settle into this morning of hope and joy with the help of our choir.
Good morning. As you can see, this is a little bit more of a chorale than a choir. We are looking for more singers, so if you are on the fence about singing, this is your call to come join us. We meet Wednesday nights downstairs in the centering room at 7 p.m. Rehearsal goes for about an hour. It's very casual, low-key. It's okay if you haven't sang for 2 years. Either have we, and we've been slowly getting our voices back, so we would love for you to come join us if you wish to. This first song is written by local musician Audrey Sergel, a good friend of mine. She composed this last year Easter service at the Unity Center, and we're going to share it for you today.
Rising in the morning. Good morning. I'm the Reverend Molly Housh Gordon, minister of this congregation. I have pale skin and long red hair, and I am wearing a rather wild and awesome floral pantsuit, if I do say so. Our opening words this Easter morning are from the Reverend Hannah Roberts Villeneuve. We come seeking a community with the power to take our pain and transform it. To take our mourning, our confusion, our anger, and transform them all. Not erase them, not carry them for us, not make them small or unimportant, but hold them and change them and love them into something new. We come seeking a community with the power of love to declare that such transformation is possible. Not because of what each might believe about God or heaven or hell, but that such transformation is possible because we will meet one another and rise together and reach out in love. We will meet one another in every pain, in our mourning and confusion and hurt. We will meet one another there, but not leave one another there. There in those places where everything is muddled and muddy, in the places where anger consumes, where fear takes hold, we will meet one another there, but not leave one another there. There in those places where we are expecting a heavy stone and the pain of a beloved's death, we meet instead the unexpected lightness of a stone that has been rolled away and the gift of possibility and beautiful things blossoming from seemingly dead earth. There in those places we meet the eternal truth that neither fear nor death nor heartbreak gets the last word. We meet one another and declare that love gets the last word. We declare, in spite of a world that seems hell-bent on making it not so, that love gets the last word. We come seeking a community with the power to take our pain and transform it, to take our mourning and hold it and change it and love it into something new. Come seeking as we are, and let us worship this Easter morning. Led by our music director, Violet Vonderhaar, a woman with light skin and chin-length dark blonde hair sitting at the piano, we will now sing together our opening hymn number 344, A Promise Through the Ages Rings. I invite you to ensure your masks are securely covering mouth and nose. You may rise or remain seated as you are most comfortable and join voice and breath and spirit together in a joyful noise.
A promise through the ages rings, not always, always something sings. God chosen rain and fetched from love, but in December's coldest hour, a note of hope's
Good morning. I am Todd Iveson, your worship associate this morning. I am a light-skinned man with brown and gray speckled hair. I'm wearing a blue sport coat and an Easter egg tie over my purple shirt. Excellent. Ba-da-bum. Yeah. Oh. We now light our chalice, the symbol of our faith in this community that holds us in the bright flame of the human spirit that unites us. Will you join me in our weekly words of affirmation printed in our order of service? Love is the spirit of this church. And service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Good morning. I'm Jamila Batchelder, the Director of Religious Education. I'm a pale-skinned woman with dark blonde hair, with more and more gray every day, and I'm wearing a teal sweater and a floral coat. As a non-native Missourian, I can say without bias, the spring here is spectacular. It takes my breath away. This week, I got to experience one of my favorite, most magical phenomena, when that first breezy day sends a shower of petals swirling around and upon you. It feels almost like a baptism every year. But when I thought back to my previous memories of this experience, I associate it not just with the beauty of it, but with an achy pain, a cathartic moment of feeling everything at once. I realized I always seem to be feeling a sense of heartbreak this time of year, sometimes for myself, for friends, for loved ones, for the world. Is it just a weird coincidence that tragedies happen at a greater frequency in the spring? Or is there something else about the beauty of this season that opens our heart in a particular way to our love and the suffering of the world? I'd like to explore that in our centering today. So breathe in and bring all the beauty of this moment into your hearts. The red buds that each season, each year seem to be more beautiful than they have ever been before. The absolute exuberant ecstasy of the Japanese magnolias. The old friend who smiled at you this morning. The joy of a child hunting for Easter eggs. Let it fill your heart to bursting. And as you breathe out, see if you can let your protective walls, the armor that guards your heart, melt away just a little bit. That protective coating of cynicism, can you let it go just for a moment? To let yourself fully love this world? How wide can you open your heart? And with your heart open wide, breathe in again and let yourself feel that heartbreak of all the ways we are hurting, that those we love are hurting, that everyone here in this room is carrying a sorrow, that the world beyond these walls is full of so much suffering. It's almost too much to bear. to love this world and feel its pain. But can you feel beneath that the strength that comes with this depth of connection? That feeling of love that we are all here together in this beautiful, aching world. Breathe out. And imagine the blossom petals swirling all around us, calling us so fully into this moment, into its poignancy. It is so hard and so beautiful. And together we find the strength to begin again.
Now, with our wide open hearts, during a moment of contemplative music, I invite you into our weekly ritual of stones and water. For those of you tuning in at home, I'd like to invite you into a moment of quiet contemplation, imagining the burdens of your heart lifted and held by our community as you listen to the music. And for those of you with us in the room, you're welcome to come forward and take a stone, infuse it with all the hopes and fears that you bring with you this morning, everything that might weigh upon your heart, and drop that stone into the water, which symbolizes the embrace of our community. Those of you who wish to have your joy or sorrow spoken aloud may write it on a yellow slip at the table on the west side of the sanctuary and put it in the basket. And I will also receive joys and sorrows submitted online at my Zoom phone up here. I now invite you into this time of contemplation together. We're now going to invite our children who wish to join in their Easter can hunt for the food bank to meet Jamila in the back of the sanctuary. And we'll sing the children out with the words that I believe are printed in your order of service.
Live in joy, go in peace. All of our love as you part. Live in joy, go in peace. Hold all our love in your heart.
I now invite you, as we prepare to hold together the joys and sorrows and prayers of our community, to take a moment of silence, to center yourselves in the spirit of love that upholds and connects and transcends us. I invite an embodied response to our time of prayer. If you wish, a hand over heart for sorrows or prayers, spirit fingers for joys shared among our community. Let us join our hearts with Gretchen Mowney, who shares sorrow for her very dear friend Deanna Quietwater Noriega, whose seeing eye dog Enzo suddenly died back on Monday. We join our hearts with Tanya Mudrick, who celebrates the choir's performance this morning. Cedar particularly says, "Thank you, Nana and Zadie." We join our hearts with Tanya as well in mourning a loss of a pregnancy at a very late stage 10 years ago. We join our hearts with Ben, who shares sorrow at the passing of his grandma's lifelong partner, Ed, but joy for the flourishing relationship he shared with them both since 2013. We join our hearts with Ian and Ellen Thomas, who share the sorrow that they will be moving away from this community where they've been so happy for 24 years. Joy at the prospect of embarking on new lives in Minneapolis, and an invitation to all of us to attend their leaving party at Twin Lakes Shelter on May 7th at 4 o'clock. Ellen and Ian, you have been an important part of this community here and of Columbia, and we will miss you so and wish you many blessings on your journeys up north. I ask for your prayers of strength and healing wishes for my younger brother, Robbie, who was diagnosed this last week with stage 4 melanoma and who begins immunotherapy treatment this Thursday. I also share a joy that today is my father, David Housh's 75th birthday today, and that he's celebrating in Tulsa with his twin brother, my Uncle Bob, who I call the other one. Happy birthday to you both. We join our hearts with Patty Doss in prayer for those we love, both near and far, who are dealing with medical challenges. May they know they are loved. We join our hearts in sorrow that Verna Rhodes, wife of James Rhodes, died yesterday morning. And And we join our hearts in joy with a young person among us who shares that they are going on a trip with their friends on Tuesday. May it be full of fun. Our prayer this morning, I'm sorry, I have one more very important concern, that we hold the Miller family in heart as Rosetta suffered a heart attack on Friday night. Wiley and Monica are with her. She is improving and doing well in the hospital, and they are grateful for that. They ask for no phone calls at this time, but cards are welcome as we send all our healing wishes to Rosetta. Our prayer this morning is by the Reverend Julia Hamilton. Spirit of hope, settle into our bones on this Easter morning. Remind us once again that the dawn light is never a gamble. If ever there was a sure bet, it is the sunrise. Even stones crumble. Even grief changes and shifts, and death is a mystery that is certain but not solid. But hope is like the sunrise, eternal and bone-bred within us. We are creatures built by sunshine and cannot carve this hope from our bones if we tried. People have tried to entomb the light, tried to seal off the morning. Emperors and kings, priests and patriarchs have brought down death, certain but not solid, to anyone who would point to a new dawn. In those fearful moments, we can be forgiven if we stumble and doubt and deny. But still the sun rises and calls her children into bloom. Always, she says, always I will return. So don't despair, all is never lost. The small ways of petty tyrants never win entirely. Place your money on the sunrise. Who are we to bet against glory? Amen. And let us now sing together once more, hymn number 266, Now the Green Blade Riseth. You may rise or remain seated as you're most comfortable to join in singing.
Our reading this morning is by Kansas City UU minister and humanist UU leader Kendall Gibbons. The humanist speaks of Easter. There are only two things we know for sure. One, they stashed Jesus' body in a tomb, temporarily until they could get a chance to bury it properly. And two, When they came back, the tomb was empty. Make of that what you will. There are many possible explanations, some more likely than others. I don't believe that Jesus came back from the dead. Neither did Martin or Malcolm. Neither did Viola Liuzzi or Frozan Safi, the women's rights activist shot by the Taliban in Afghanistan last November. Neither will dismembered journalist Jamal Khashoggi or Alexei Navalny when he dies in a Russian prison. Neither will documentary filmmaker Brent Renaud or photographer Maxime Levin, both killed by invading armies in Ukraine. Kevin Strickland and Lamont McIntyre will not get back the stolen decades of their lives. I don't believe that the crucifixion is a story with a happy ending, or that it was a one-time event. It happens over and over as the human journey unfolds. It happens to us and the people we love. It happens to the righteous and the innocent. Crucifixion happens, and it feels like the end of the world every time. It feels like nothing could matter anymore, ever. And then, inevitably and miraculously, something happens next. Something happens. Of course it does, because the world hasn't ended yet. It's not always an empty tomb. How trite would that become? Mostly, the beloved bodies just lie right there, peacefully decomposing. But something happens, and whether we want it or not, a new chapter begins. Maybe the sun comes up, or the lilies do. Spring rolls around. That happens. Or memories come, or someone needs you. You eat food. That happens. You walk down the road and share a recollection. Life happens, keeps happening. The dead don't rise, but we do. One day, it happens, you take a breath, and it doesn't hurt to breathe. You start to see people again, really see them. Hope rises, community rises, you rise, we rise, life rises. Not because death isn't real. Crucifixion is not just pretend. But something else is just as real, maybe even more real. Something happens next. That is the other thing we know for sure. Life rises, outrage rises, love rises, faith rises, tears rise, hope rises. This I do believe. Here ends the reading. We will now enjoy an anthem from the choir.
in Ukraine this week, there will be women and others riding on eggs in bomb shelters and basements and in their homes. Ukrainians will be riding on eggs in Poland and Germany and Canada and elsewhere. Ukrainian Americans will be riding eggs in New York and Texas and California and points between. This is the ancient tradition of pisanki. The image on the screen is of eggs very, very intricately and colorfully painted. The tradition of pisanki is thought to have originated in the prehistoric Trypillian culture in the Carpathian Mountains and has been practiced continually by Ukrainians and those in the Ukrainian diaspora unto this day. Pisanki are created through a wax and dye batik process with intricate designs and bright, beautiful colors. Each symbol and shade is invested with deep meaning, such that traditional eggs could be considered as written letters and blessings to those who receive them. Each square or diamond, each cross or fish, a letter. Indeed, the word pisanki comes from a Ukrainian root word meaning to write. In the historic practice decades and centuries ago, the women of the household would spend every night of Holy Week praying and painting eggs after everyone else was in bed. A large household would produce up to 60 intricately worked pisanki, made of the most perfectly shaped eggs taken from young hens, and secret family recipes of bright dye. The eggs originally represented rebirth and the bright nourishment of the sun, and eventually came to also represent the resurrection of Christ. To give a pisanka is to give a gift of life. And after these eggs were painstakingly crafted, they would be distributed to the community in acts of connection, weaving the townspeople in a network of care. Several would be given to the priest, and several placed on family graves in the cemetery. Many would be given to children and godchildren, exchanged between unmarried young adults as an expression of interest. Several would be saved to place in the coffins of loved ones who might die during the year. Several would be given to extended family and friends, and a few would be placed in animal troughs and beehives to ensure good production through the year. Elders would receive pisanki with dark, rich colors, and children would receive brightly colored pisanki with playful designs. A bowl full would be kept in each home, not just a colorful display, but protection against lightning and fire. These traditions have evolved over centuries, but they have been kept alive across generations and are practiced still today. To give a pisanka is to give a gift of life. And the practice of pisanki is the work of connection, sharing the gift of life one to the other. In Ukraine this week, there will be women riding on eggs in bomb shelters, and people riding on eggs in basements and in their homes. They will know profoundly what their ancestors also knew, that life is as fragile as a hollowed-out egg, and as strong and pliable as melted wax, and as beautiful as a rainbow of shining dyes. They will know profoundly what their ancestors also knew, that there is great violence, terror, the deathliness of empire at work in this world, and that it is only the power of hands reaching out to one another in love, making a chain of compassion and hope and resistance that can overcome such deathliness. An ancient myth of Ukraine has it that an evil serpent awaits in the Carpathian Mountains to destroy this world, and that serpent is only held at bay by a chain that people make with every pasanka they create. By this myth, it is the beauty and connections created in community that keep evil from overrunning this world. From the myth, I imagine humanity joined together in resistance, facing down that serpent hand in hand in hand, standing in fear and trembling and joy and love to protect all that is beautiful and sacred on our earth and in our lives. I imagine us making art, making beauty, strengthening the chain that works against hatred and empire and deathliness. And doing it by investing in what is fragile and pliable and bright, by holding hands, by painting eggs. The poet Daniel Ladinsky, writing in the style of the Persian mystic Hafiz, has said, "Out of a great need we are all holding hands and climbing. Not loving is a letting go. Listen, the terrain around here is far too dangerous for that." Ukrainians will be painting eggs this week in dangerous terrain. And we will be holding them in heart and sending aid and reaching out every way we can, as we have been doing. We will be making a chain. And it will not hold evil entirely at bay. It will not prevent suffering and pain and so much death. And isn't that the thing about resurrection? The work of love and redemption is never done. It's never complete. It's always under threat. But isn't that also the thing about humans at our best? At our best, we keep holding hands and climbing. We refuse to let go. This, to me, is the central lesson of the story of Easter. The sheer, stubborn survival of love in the face of death, life in the face of empire, and community in the face of shattering grief. Pasanki will be painted this coming week because the Eastern Orthodox Easter, which many Ukrainians celebrate, won't occur until next Sunday. The Eastern Church follows a different calendar than Western Christians. Recently, I read an article in the Christian Century magazine about another significant difference in theological approaches to Easter in the Eastern and Western Church, as observed in their iconography. Preeminent Christian historian John Dominic Crossan in the article reminds us that the biblical story of Easter does not give a description of the resurrection. In all the biblical tellings, Jesus is crucified, and then a bit of time passes, and he is either gone from the tomb or returned already, depending on which gospel you're reading. What happens in between has been the source of profound theological imaginings over millennia, as well as significant fodder for Christian artists, ancient and modern. In most of Western Christian iconography, Crossan tells us Jesus' return is pictured as a solitary act. Most often, he is depicted descending in a blaze of glory from heaven like a divine superhero come to save us all. But in the iconography of the Eastern Church, Crossan tells us, Jesus is most often pictured ascending from hell, where his defeat of death was imagined as quite literal. Crossan shows an image from an ancient cathedral in Cappadocia where he's pictured Jesus stomping on a demon and holding out his hand to Adam, to Eve, to the prophets, to David and Solomon, to bring them all out of hell with him. In this iconography, they rise together, a collective resurrection that leaves none behind. Indeed, the Eastern Church has a livelier tradition than the Western around what is called the Harrowing of Hell, in which Jesus is imagined to have used the time between his crucifixion and resurrection to descend into hell, a righteous demon slayer fighting the forces of evil and bringing the holy dead back up with him, all of them, none left behind. They emerge together in this tradition from death into life and show us what is possible of the human heart. In the last week, my family has been walking in the valley of the shadow of death. After my 35-year-old brother Robbie went in the space of 48 hours from thinking he had a sinus infection to learning he had a brainstem bleed to being diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma that had spread to his brain. I will tell you now that we have great cause for hope in innovative immunotherapy treatments, and Robbie is feeling good and resolved in the face of that treatment. Still, this week my family descended together into a hell that I know many of you have traveled, yourself or with your loved ones. And this Easter morning, I want to testify to you that love refused to leave us there alone. At our most fragile moments, we found untold beauty. In the depth of our terror and heartbreak, we found we were surrounded by hands reaching out. Hands joined together, a protective human chain against the serpent, ready to lift us up from that pit of despair if they possibly could. And of course they couldn't, not entirely. Pain and fear are real. So those hands met us there in the depths with meals and emails, Facebook comments and flowers. They met us there and they did not leave us in that valley alone. Love is just as real. We know humans cannot take away one another's pain. We cannot save each other. But my God, the way we hold each other, the way we rise to meet that pain so it is never the end of the story, the way we stand or sit and hold hands and laugh and play games and look out into the void together and together take away its sting. The true truth of death and suffering is always present in this life. And the equally true truth of life and love are always, always rising to meet it. We are rising to meet it in love and solidarity and connection. We tell this story every year of life defeating empire, love defeating death, and hope rising inexorably despite all odds. But this year there is a new shade to the story for me. After the last week of my life, I am feeling the collectivity of resurrection, the communal truth of resurrection. I'm convicted this year by the Eastern Church's telling that Jesus doesn't come down alone to superhero save us, but that he descends to hell and stays there and collects all the ancestors who ensure that no one is left behind. And I am convicted that we, knowing him to be one symbol of the best that humanity can be, we do the same. We join each other in the valley of the shadow of death so that none need walk there alone. We go down into the hells of this world bringing life. And when we do that, we embody to one another the love that cannot fix anything, but that saves everything. We do this amid the tragedies of our lives, the truths of suffering and mortality that none can avoid. And at our best, we also do this amid the deathly structures of our world, the killing logic of empire that need not be so, but so often is. I have seen resurrection all winter long in the coldest nights of solidarity and warmth with our homeless neighbors and their mobile soup kitchen allies, showing up for one another to advocate for better support from the city, showing up with hot food and blankets and tents and a brand new mobile first aid unit. In the face of the hells that empire creates, we cannot fix things for one another whole cloth. Often our attempts can make things worse, but we can love each other. We can show up with and for each other in every corner where empire has taken hold. We can show up and fight demons together, refusing to leave one another behind. And perhaps then we find suddenly, simply through loving each other, that things shift. Nothing is fixed, but life is there. Resurrection is there. Everywhere we join hands in a chain of resistance to oppression, facing down that snake of empire, resurrection is there, helping us love one another beyond every barrier. Everywhere we refuse to amplify or avoid the logic of suffering and instead come together alongside one another in connection and hope, then we are embodying together the love that fixes nothing and saves everything, and that is resurrection. This week, the people of Ukraine are still fleeing their homes. They are still being murdered in the street, and they are making pisanki in exile. And their supporters in New York and Texas and across the world are making pisanki in solidarity and support. Life is fragile and pain is real and empire is deadly, and we make art and love and connection all the same, and that is resurrection. There are abundant places of crucifixion and hell in this world, unfolding right now in every corner. But as Kendall Gibbons told us in our reading, something else is happening next. Something else is happening too. People are joining hands and climbing. Out of a great need, people are refusing to let go or leave behind. People are making beauty in suffering, taking the great, fragile, terribly breakable shells of our lives and covering them in intricate design and riotous color. And then we're giving them away, sharing our pisanki, sharing our days, giving the gift of life for and with one another, making a great chain of humanity that rises and rises, and even empire, and even pain, and even death cannot overcome it. Hallelujah. And happy Easter. Our hymn is number 203, All Creatures of the Earth and Sky. Let's sing some hallelujahs. Let's rejoice in the beauty of life and the power of love. I invite you to rise or remain seated as you are most comfortable to join in singing.
Sun with golden beam,
Now is the time in our service when we join in the spiritual practice of generosity, remembering that it is by sharing and supporting one another that we feel most human. As we remember the story of a great spiritual teacher executed by an ancient state, we are moved this morning to support an end to all state executions as we take a faith in action collection for Missourians for alternatives to the death penalty. In a moment, the choir will sing once more as our ushers move through the sanctuary for those who wish to give in the offering plate. Online and text giving options are available in the order of service, both in person and online. But first, Reverend Molly, filling in for Wiley Miller, will come forward to tell us about the current work of MADP and introduce our offering.
This is work to which Wiley Miller and the Miller family has long been incredibly devoted and active, and I am honored to say a word in Wiley's place as he is with Rosetta this morning. We continue to send our healing wishes. Missourians for Alternatives to the Death Penalty has been advocating for the abolition of state execution in Missouri for many, many years, and was incorporated and staffed as a nonprofit organization starting in 2015. The death penalty is largely unsupported by Missouri constituents, and as the number of pending death penalty cases and the population of Missouri's death row steadily declines, Missourians for Alternatives to the Death Penalty continues to be a driving force between the movement to abolish the death penalty in Missouri. They feel they have success in their sight. There have been 90 executions committed by the state of Missouri since 1976, when the death penalty was reinstated in the United States. The next execution in Missouri is scheduled for May 3rd of this year, in just 2 weeks. And MADP's current work is focused on advocating for clemency for Carmen Deck, who is scheduled for execution at that time. They will be holding vigils here in Columbia as well as in Jefferson City and across the state. And you can visit their website, madp.org, I believe, to find a petition for clemency and other information on their current work. With successful campaigns to stop executions and unique attention to those most impacted, MADP continues their work to abolish the death penalty in Missouri in order to end a system that has far too long placed vengeance over justice, furthered racial violence, and killed innocent people. Thank you for generously supporting the work of Missourians for Alternatives to the Death Penalty with our Faith to Action collection this morning. And thank you to our choir for their wonderful music all morning long and for another anthem now. Love is risen. We are risen. Let us go forth to choose love and to rise together. Our closing words are from the Reverend Wayne Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the stakes are very high, and the path is never clear. Take courage. For deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. We rise together. Go in blessing and be a blessing to a world that needs our care. And let us sing our benediction. We are allowing hand-holding if every party is comfortable, but make sure that you're really attending to the needs of your neighbors.